Hello, good afternoon, good evening, good afternoon. It's just after 12 o'clock, and just like to welcome you to another workflow devotion with Darrell and Arlene. I hope that you can hear me and see me. My vision of you guys is not what I'm used to, but we're having another wonderful day here in the state of Florida, the sunshine state of Florida. So as I get a few things together here, again, I want to welcome you. This is Workflow Devotion with Darrell and Arlene. I'm Dr. Darrell Gadsden. Well, we are continuing our series on exposure. We're continuing to talk about the first 5 books of the Bible. We've already gone through 3 of them. We've gone through Genesis, we've gone through Exodus, and we've gone through Leviticus. And now we're going over into the book of Numbers. Again, I'm only giving a synopsis of each one of those books, and I recommend that you go in for yourself and do some serious reading, studying, so that you will have a clearer understanding of God's Word and what God requires of each and every one of us. So today's topic that I selected for what we're going to be talking about under exposure is self-exposure. Self-exposure. You know, one of the most difficult things for all of us to sort of deal with is when opportunity comes and we are exposed to ourselves. I don't know about that many of you, but I can remember as a freshman in college and as a new basketball player, being on a line, getting ready to take a free throw. I had practiced a lot, I had shot a lot of free throws, but now the game is on the line, and I'm standing there at that free throw line. Everybody on my team is depending on me, and everyone on the opposite team is depending on me to miss this shot. Everyone in the audience one side is cheering me on while the other side is trying to heckle and say, miss the shot, and all those things are going on. So I am exposed, but my exposure is to myself. Well, this is where we find the children of Israel. God has already told them that he made a promise to them to take them to the promised land. Creation has already happened. Deliverance has already happened. They were already taken out of Egypt. Leviticus talked about some of the laws and all that exposed the fact that they had sin, and the sin was taking them to places that they really didn't want to go. And now we're in Numbers. We only have Numbers and Deuteronomy to cover the first 5 books, which are the books of the law, sometimes called the Torah. So now, here we are in Numbers. If you remember, at the end of Leviticus, we found out that Moses now has told the people what they needed to do based on what God told him. The tent has already been designed, it's already made, and near the end of Leviticus, we found out that now Moses is able to go into the tent. He's able to be a part of this communing with God on a level where the people could actually see the Shekinah glory of God come down and to set on the tent, and now Moses is able to go in to the tent and commune with God. That's where we are right now. So now we're going over into Numbers. So in Numbers, what we find out is that they're still at the foot of Mount Sinai, but they're in preparation to leave Mount Sinai to continue on this journey towards the promised land. And as they get ready or prepare themselves for this journey here in Numbers, God tells Moses to count the people. Not that God didn't know how many it was. God wanted them to know and to realize just how big they actually were. Because up to this time, they had never had what we call a census of how many people were actually part of that nation. So God tells Moses to count the people. He also lays out how the nation should be set up and what should be done in order for them to move forward. So now they come together. The tent is being made the focal point of everything that's going on within the children of Israel's camp. So God tells them that he must be the central or the center of everything in their lives. So they count all of the tribes. They find out about how many people there actually are. They feel good about the numbers that they have acquired of people that are there with them, and God is there with them. And now they start their journey from Mount Sinai, going to another place called Paran, the wilderness of Paran. Well, in this process of leaving Mount Sinai, going to the wilderness of Paran, they have to go through a series of issues. It's hot. There are some obstacles that come up in the process of going where they're trying to get to. They are being exposed to themselves in terms of what they can and what they can't handle. Have you ever been that way? As soon as God is ready to elevate you to a promise that he has made for you, as soon as you start realizing that the promise is coming your way and you have to step up to the plate, you start to get nervous. And in that process of getting nervous, all the things that are weakness inside of you start to be exposed. This is where the children of Israel found themselves. They were being exposed to their very own weaknesses. Remember, I said before that God had exposed them to his strength. But now they are being exposed to their weaknesses. You say, preacher, what are you talking about? Well, their weaknesses were they were not willing to suffer to get to the promise. Have you ever been that way where you really want the promise, but you don't want to suffer to get there? You want everything to go smooth, but if you realize that the suffering that you go through is what gives you the strength to make it to the promise that God has already set up for you. You know, people talk about a butterfly in the cocoon, and how while that butterfly is in that cocoon, that butterfly is growing strength. And the most important part of that cocoon experience is that the butterfly's wings get strong enough that they can break loose the cocoon. And if you help them break it loose, then the strength is not built up. And if the strength is not built up, they can't fly. You must be able to go through the things that God has in front of you so that you will have the strength to walk into the promise that God has for you. So again, now they have left Mount Sinai. The glory of God, the Shekinah glory, has risen up, and now the priests are leading the way, and they are following God, and the people now are following the priests as they follow God. Isn't that amazing? If we could only take a small look at that process all by itself, how would things change in your life if you're walking towards your promise, but you're following God as you walk to your promise? A promise from God is something that you could hold on to no matter what's going on in your life. It doesn't matter about the obstacles that may come up. And that's what was going on with the children of Israel. Obstacles came up. They had to deal with some issues that were coming up. And I really recommend that you read the entire book of Numbers. I know it's long. I know it seems like it's a lot, but everything there plays a part. You'll find in this book, you'll find out that there were some people that still talked about Moses. Even though they seen all the things that God had done through the man of God, they were still talking about Moses. Even to the point that some of them wanted to turn around and go back to Egypt. They'd rather go back to being enslaved than to go into the promise that was promised to them. Why? Because of the fact that in order to get to the promise, they had to be able to deal with their own shortcomings. They had to be able to deal with their own self-exposure. You have to be able to deal with your weaknesses in order to gain strength to go into your promise. Well, so they talked about Moses, even to the point that Moses' brother and his sister even talked about him in front of the people. And Moses still bowed down and prayed for them. God was upset with them. God was upset with what they were doing and how they were treating the man of God. But the man of God still fell down on his knees and prayed for the people. He still approached God and said, God, I'm paraphrasing. He says, God, don't hold this against them. Remember the promises that you made to Abraham. You promised that they would have access to this promised land. Lord, don't go back on your promises. And God, being who he is, merciful, stayed the course. So now they're traveling to Paran. And on that travel to Paran, they're constantly complaining. They're constantly talking about Moses. They're constantly doing stuff that doesn't have to be done. And they get just outside of the wilderness of Paran. And when they get there now, some things occur that gets not only them upset, but it also gets God upset because of them. They start complaining, we don't have enough food, we don't have enough water, we don't have enough this, our shoes are hurting our feet, it's hot out here. Have you ever found yourself going towards your promise and all you can concentrate on is those things that just don't seem to fit right? Instead of embracing what God is doing for you. And you're not by yourself. We all go through it. We all have those moments where God is blessing us, but just because we're going through a little wilderness period, just because we're in a little cocoon and we're trying to stretch our wings out so that we can fly, we give up. And if that butterfly in that cocoon would just give up and let his wings fall down, he'd die inside of what would be a promise. Don't let your promise that is waiting on you still wait while you're fighting in your past. So now here's what they do. God is upset with them because of all of this complaining that they're doing. Moses is upset with them because of all the complaining that they're doing. And Moses is so upset that when they ask for water, and God tells Moses, this is in Numbers, God tells Moses to speak to the rock that they may be able to get water. But Moses is upset because of them and their complaining. And instead of speaking to the rock, Moses hits the rock twice. And this gets Moses into trouble. Moses now cannot enter into the promised land. He finds himself in the same place of others that were not following the orders of God. You know, sometimes we can allow people that are in our circle to get us so upset that we too will go against God's word and what God has told us to do. It is beneficial for us to be able to stay under God's rules and regulations, no matter what anybody says. Just because someone else is coming off on you the wrong way, it does not mean it gives you the authority through Christ to go and treat them the way they're treating you. We must always be children of God, no matter what is going on in our own lives. So Moses hits the rock twice. Water still comes out. The blessings are still there. And the children are still continuing to go on. They get past Paran and they start going towards Moab. God is upset. God literally makes a decree. I will not allow these people, that group, to go into the promised land. They complain too much. They have no ideal about what I'm capable of doing, even though they've seen it, and I'm not going to allow them in there. God has the right to do that because of how they've been. So what he does, he allows them to circle around in the wilderness for 40 years. Just enough time for all the old people to die off, so that the children that are growing up now can go into the promise that God made to his servant Abraham. They were all left behind. And because Moses made that one mistake, he couldn't enter either. Sometimes we just tend to allow others to dictate to us how we interact. Not that God would give up on Moses, but God was not pleased with the decision that Moses made. And Moses had to deal with that decision. Moses had to suffer the consequences of the decision that he made. But Moses still had the opportunity, as we will see later, to see the promised land, even though he could not enter into the promised land. So a series of things are happening. Snakes come into the camp. People are bit by snakes. God allows Moses now to build on a rod a symbol of a snake, and says if the people would look at the snake, the symbol, that they would be healed. A lot of things happen because of disobedience, because they did not want to believe that God will do what he said he would do. And now they are at the place. They are just about there to get ready to go over into the promised land. But as they come close to Moab, the king of Moab sees this great multitude of people coming, and he prepares himself for war, to fight against the people, God's people. And when they come in to fight against God's people, they can't win the battle. They're losing. So then they call for their own priest to come in. His name is Balaam. They call for him and say, come and curse these people, because we know that everything that God has blessed you with, anytime you open your mouth, whatever you curse is cursed, and whatever you bless is blessed through God. And Balaam sends messages saying, I can't curse those people. They come after him again, a second time, and then a third. And now Balaam goes with them to go there to curse these people that God has already said you cannot curse. I recommend that you read it. There's some series of things that happens at that time when Balaam is on his way to try and curse God's people. But when he gets there, he tells the king, I can't curse what God has blessed. In other words, no one can curse what God has already blessed in you. Anything that God has already said he's going to do for you, any of the promises God has already made to you will occur. And nobody can block God's blessings for you. So now Balaam, instead of cursing the people, Balaam now blesses the people, and he tells them that within their nation is going to come another leader that's going to not only bless them, but it's going to bless the entire world. And now we get to the end of the book of Numbers, where now Moses is preparing to tell the people about, he's going to count them one more time. There's going to be another census that's going to be done. And then he's going to reiterate the laws that they're going to need when they get ready to go and enter into the promised land. Some things that they need to keep in mind and be aware of, that God is God all by himself. He does not change. He will always be the same. And if you will honor him, he will continue to honor you. Even though as the children of Israel were going through this process, as they were believing and not believing, as they were not following him, he was still being obedient to his own word, because he promised Abraham that he would send his descendants to the promised land. Well, this has been another workflow devotion with Darrell and Arlene. I'm Dr. Darrell Gadsden. There are things that God has promised for you. There are things that God has put in place just for you and for me. And we must be able to go through those wilderness spots and be faithful to God, that way we'll have the strength to deal with those obstacles that come before us as we are exposed to our own selves, our own weaknesses. Strength comes when you know what your weakness is, because you can work hard to strengthen those weaknesses. Well, God bless you. May heaven continue to smile on you. If you like these videos, tell someone else about them. Share the video. Find us on not just on Facebook, but also on YouTube. But it's not about you nor I. It's about others that need to hear God's word and need to use God's word to better their own life, knowing that sometimes the short things that you have to go through as you're spreading your wings is only to strengthen you to get to the promise that God has for you. Until Wednesday, God bless you. May heaven continue to smile on you when we'll be going into the book of Deuteronomy. See ya.